We all know that the list of heroes capable of wielding Mjolnir in the MCU is pretty exclusive. I mean, so far we have Thor, Vision, Captain America, and now Jane Foster. But that got me thinking, why can't the other Avengers lift the hammer? Well, that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to break down 15 of the strongest MCU heroes who can't lift Mjolnir and speculate on why that is. Could heroes like Iron Man, Spider-Man, or the Hulk ever lift the hammer? Let's discuss. I think out of any hero on this list, Spider-Man has the most potential for lifting Mjolnir. I feel like he's just right there. If you're a believer in the scenario where Steve Rogers could nudge Mjolnir without quite lifting it in Age of Ultron because he was almost worthy, and not the theory where he could move it the whole time but chose not to, then I feel like the same thing is happening with Peter Parker. Because as a hero, Peter is totally worthy. Look at the Homecoming finale where he sees the vultures about to blow up, and instead of saying a cool hero's catchphrase like "Vulch this" or something, actually good, Peter does everything he can to save Adrian Toomes. It's the same thing in No Way Home, where yes, Peter did have a moment of wanting to send every villain back to their timeline because it wasn't his problem, but soon realized that he could cure everyone from being a bad guy instead of just sending them to their imminent doom. To me, that's the heart of a worthy hero right there, right? So what's holding Peter back? Well, I think it has to do with Peter's guilt. We still don't know what exactly happened to the MCU's Uncle Ben, but we can guess it led to Peter feeling extremely guilty about not being there to save him. Normally, that's Peter Parker's entire driving force behind being a hero, and the MCU may have just doubled down on that. With the tragic demise of Aunt May, Peter was seen feeling broken and guilty on his own, and it was only with the help of his fellow Spider Bros that Peter could snap out of the funk and continue fighting. Though I don't think that guilt will ever go away, and I think that's what would stop Peter from ultimately lifting Mjolnir. Alright, you know how I just said that Spider-Man is probably the closest hero on this list to being worthy? Well, let's jump to the other end of the spectrum and talk about the best hero who's probably the farthest away from being worthy. Yes, I'm talking about Iron Man. Now please, before you angrily hurtle your rotten tomatoes into the void to pelt my disembodied voice, please know that I love Iron Man. I do agree with Steve Rogers when he said that Tony was Earth's greatest protector. That dude's heart is in the right place. At least, metaphorically. With that arc reactor, I'm not sure of Tony's inside situation, but what I'm saying is, Tony is a fantastic hero who will always go above and beyond to save the day. But would he ever be worthy to wield Mjolnir? Well, no. His ego and arrogance is almost as big as that moon Thanos threw at him, and then on the flip side of that, he struggles with his feelings of paranoia, inadequacy, and guilt over not doing enough to protect Earth. Like, seriously, inside Tony Stark are two wolves, or however that saying goes. One is super arrogant and thinks he's the best, and that side probably thinks he could invent some piece of tech to lift the hammer for him, and then the other side probably thinks he'll never be good enough to lift the hammer and will spiral into a panic attack. And let's be honest, if the hammer was picking people's worthiness based on decision making, then Tony probably wouldn't make the cut. Oh, let's see, Mr. Stark, did you recruit a 15-year-old kid to fly with you to Germany to fight other Avengers? Yeah, sorry, that's gonna be a no. I was honestly pleasantly surprised by Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I thought it would just be another standard origin story, but it turned out to be one of my favorite Phase 4 projects. Like, come on, that bus fight? If Mjolnir granted worthiness based solely on awesome bus fights, then Shang-Chi would certainly be worthy. And I guess no one else would be, right? Does Shang-Chi have the only bus fight in the MCU? More bus fights, please. Anyways, Shang-Chi is an exciting addition to the MCU, and I can't wait to see him chuck those rings at people while singing karaoke with Katie and Wong in the future. But just because he can now wield the 10 rings, do you think that makes him worthy to wield Mjolnir? Man, that would be a crazy combination, right? But no, as it stands, I don't think Shang-Chi would be able to wield Thor's hammer, and it comes down to his early childhood. We learn in that movie that Shang-Chi didn't disobey his father and run away after being told to assassinate someone, but rather only ran away after the fact, a secret that Shang-Chi keeps closely guarded. There's the theory out there that Steve Rogers only became fully worthy after he revealed the secret of Tony's parents to Tony, and if we're playing by those rules, then I think Shang-Chi still has some unburdening to do with his past before he can lift the hammer. Sure, he's told Katie, but is that enough? I don't know. But man, again, picture the damage someone could do if they both wielded Mjolnir and the 10 rings. Wild. Between Hulk and Bruce Banner, who do you think is more worthy of wielding Mjolnir? I mean, they both can't do it, but who do you think is closer on the worthiness scale? Hulk has a relatively straightforward mind and is just generally preoccupied with rage and anger, but as we saw in Thor Ragnarok, it's also really easy to hurt Hulk's feelings. I always thought it was tremendously sad that Hulk had spent all those years on Sakaar thinking everyone on Earth hated him, so all that rage and sadness seemed to disqualify him. But I don't think Bruce Banner is much closer. Sure, he's incredibly smart and has one of those large MCU brains, but intelligence does not equal worthiness. This is a man who has spent most of his adult life struggling with who he is. He's gone from living in fear about the monster inside him to gradually accepting it, and maybe you could make the case that Professor Hulk could lift Mjolnir because it's Bruce's mind finally untethered from all the fear and hidden rage inside of him. But you know what? I'm saying no. I think the Hammer would realize that any worthiness for Professor Hulk is thrown right out the window because it would realize how messed up the whole concept of Professor Hulk truly is and how it completely erases the Hulk personality. And yes, I do have to mention that every chance I get until they address it. So no, I don't think the character is worthy. Who do you think is more arrogant, Doctor Strange or Iron Man? It's a shame that we didn't get to see more interactions with these two characters because they're just two dudes who always think they're the smartest person in the room. But what's great is that they're smart in different ways. Either way though, Iron Man isn't worthy of Mjolnir and neither is Dr. Stephen Strange. I don't know, I think anyone who invites a teenager into their home and offers to rewrite all of reality basically because the teenager looks like a big fluffy stuffed animal come to life shouldn't be worthy of Mjolnir. I would like to think anyone worthy of Mjolnir has a bit more foresight and isn't as rash with their decision-making process. Out of all the things Doctor Strange wouldn't be worthy of, I think his general impulsiveness coupled with his ego disqualify him the most. Plus, we know he dyes his goatee now. Anyone who dyes their facial hair in order to look better for the general public probably isn't in the right headspace to be worthy. Okay, I know this list is about strongest heroes who can't wield Mjolnir, so you may be asking what the heck is the God of Mischief doing on here? But I think with the character's arc in Thor Ragnarok, coupled with the ongoing Loki TV show, you have an Asgardian who's borderline a hero. But no matter how good Loki is turning, right now he's not worthy of wielding Mjolnir. Yes, he seems to not want to take over Midgard anymore or hurt innocent people, but I do think he's also still more than capable of stabbing you in the back and running away if it suits him. For that reason, he's not worthy of Mjolnir, but could he be one day? Those who've watched mine and my saintly editor Ben's videos recently have probably noticed that I've been talking up some sort of character conclusion where Loki finally becomes worthy of Mjolnir. I think it would be just a satisfying ending for the God of Mischief, don't you? Scarlet Witch is proving to be the most powerful character in the MCU, which is crazy given that the character started with needing Hawkeye to give her a pep talk. But after WandaVision, something clearly unlocked within her and she became the Scarlet Witch. And if that's not enough, she's spending her time studying the Darkhold, which is only increasing her power. But hey, pure power does not equate worthiness. And I think Mjolnir wouldn't look too kindly on the fact that Wanda did enslave an entire town against their will and then actively tried to keep them subdued for as long as possible. That's clearly a not very worthy move, right? But honestly, Wanda might be the only character who it might not matter whether she's worthy or not. I guess if she wanted to, Wanda could rewrite reality and create a universe where the Hammer's enchantment is no longer there. Do you think she's at that point yet? Tough to say. I know I started this list by saying Spider-Man was the closest to being worthy of Mjolnir, but you know who's probably also close? Ant-Man. That's right, Scott Lang may be the comic relief character for most of his movies, but behind all those laughs and jokes and Paul Rudd's dreamy eyes is a character without a whole lot of flaws. Yes, he keeps secrets from time to time, like how he didn't destroy the Ant-Man suit like he said, but they're all relatively minor secrets. Secrets that wouldn't disqualify someone from being worthy. But besides that, look at the strength of Scott's character. He loves his daughter more than anything, would always do what needs to be done in order to help people and protect his friends, and not only provided the key information to help bring everyone back from the snap, but also gave up presumably the most. Imagine if you're Scott and you see that your daughter, who you love more than anything, has suddenly aged 5 years. You'd probably want to spend time with her, right? But nope, Scott immediately worked with the Avengers to help save the day. A good dude. But why isn't he completely worthy? I don't know, probably has to do with Baskin-Robbins. Baskin-Robbins always finds out. Yelena may be an exciting new Phase 4 character, and I can't wait to see where she goes next, but let's be real here, no way is Yelena lifting that hammer anytime soon. She's a Black Widow, and Black Widows often aren't afraid to get their hands dirty if necessary. Like, let's even ignore her darker Black Widow past, where she probably carried out unspeakable atrocities, but rather let's focus on her desire to eliminate Hawkeye. I think to be worthy, you can't have revenge in your heart, and for the longest time, that's all Yelena wanted. She didn't care that Valentina Allegra de Fontaine was probably lying to her, or that it seemed fishy to think that Hawkeye straight up eliminated Natasha, but Yelena didn't see reason for the longest time. She just wanted sweet, sweet revenge, and that sort of thing disqualifies you from hammer lifting duties. Star-Lord is about as worthy of wielding Mjolnir as Drax is worthy at winning a poetry contest. It's not gonna happen. Yes, Star-Lord is an incredibly fun hero, and it's a real treat watching the Guardians and him stumble around the universe to save it, but that doesn't mean he'd ever be worthy of Mjolnir. Remember what I said about Tony Stark and Doctor Strange having huge egos? Well, at least they had the intelligence to back that up and warrant such huge levels of arrogance. Star-Lord is arrogant and thinks he's the coolest without ever succeeding, and I think that disqualifies him from being worthy of Mjolnir. But also, he lets his emotions get the better of him, as evidenced by his universe-ending decision to smack Thanos after getting too emotional during the fight on Titan, and thus ensuring the universe's ultimate defeat. At the time of writing this, Moon Knight hasn't finished its run yet, but I think I could safely say that Moon Knight is not in the proper state of mind to wield Mjolnir. Steven is too nervous and doubtful, Mark is hiding some truly deep pain within him regarding his past, and his presumably third personality only is there to cause chaos. Yeah, with all that, I don't think Moon Knight would be worthy, at least in the traditional sense. In the comics, there's a weird moment where Moon Knight is actually able to counteract the enchantment and wield the hammer no problem, because actually Mjolnir is made up of Uru, and because originally Uru is a moon rock, Moon Knight can control it and swing it around. Sure, it doesn't look like he can access the full spectrum of powers though, but rather he just used it to smack Thor in the face. A good moment, but Mjolnir is putting that guy under the do not talk to him ever umbrella, so I doubt Moon Knight would ever be truly worthy. Man, very similar to Ant-Man's entry, there's nothing inherently wrong with Hope Van Dyne's personality. She doesn't have any major tremendous faults that is prohibiting her from picking up Mjolnir and using it to become the Mighty Wasp. But I guess the question is she still working through the trauma of her mother's disappearance and her tough relationship with her father? That was the driving backbone of the character for the first two movies, and you can tell they shaped her into the hero we saw in the movie, but now that she fixed her relationship with her dad and she has successfully rescued her mom, what more is there to work through? I think her next step would be crucial in deciding if she's worthy or not. Now that she's worked through all her major issues, will it be enough to lift Mjolnir or no? Could you imagine if she was successful and she could shrink and grow the hammer at will? Man, fun fact, Deadpool once wiped out Thor by using Pym particles to increase the hammer's size, so I'm just saying it's not impossible. Sam Wilson is the new Captain America, so it begs the question of if he's going to follow in his predecessor's footsteps and eventually work to wield the hammer like Steve Rogers. That might be a fun moment, right? But I do think Sam has a lot to work through before the hammer considers his worthiness. He's still grappling with living in the shadow of Steve Rogers and was originally hesitant about picking up the shield to begin with. Someone with that much doubt boiling inside him feels like they wouldn't be able to pick up and transform with the power of Thor, right? But from everything we've seen of Sam, we know he's a good hero who's always been loyal to the people around him, so even though he may not be worthy at this stage, I could see it happening down the line. When Steve Rogers gave the shield to Sam Wilson, I was one of those people who was upset because Bucky was standing 10 feet away and I thought it should have gone to him. But what the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show showed me is that Bucky has his own demons and struggles to work through before he's ready to take on the Captain America mantle. For one, the question has to be asked is if Mjolnir would consider someone like Bucky. Sure, on his own he hasn't done bad things, but with his Winter Soldier programming, he was the world's top assassin. Would Mjolnir know that Bucky Barnes was being mind controlled and therefore not rob him of a chance to pick up the hammer? Well, whether or not that would be true, Bucky still feels a whole barrel full of shame about his Winter Soldier days, and although he wants to make amends and tell people what his life has consisted of, we see Bucky still struggling to talk about it. So with all that, even though he has a cool upgraded arm, Bucky Barnes isn't worthy. Sorry, Hawkeye, you're not worthy either. Yes, he lost his entire family, but that's really not an excuse to go on a legendary and terrifying hunting spree as the Dark Vigilante known as Ronin. That takes a special level of darkness. But even with his family back, I don't think Hawkeye would be worthy of the hammer. Now he's dealing with his own personal trauma, all about not being able to sacrifice himself first on Vormir and watching his best friend in the world throw herself off a cliff. That sort of traumatic and triggering moment sits with Hawkeye enough where he can't even watch New York's hottest Avenger play without being overwhelmed. Anyone who carries around that sort of baggage with him has no chance of lifting the hammer, ever. I know that robs us of seeing Hawkeye somehow attaching Mjolnir to his bow and shooting it like an arrow, but that's going to be the price we have to pay. Okay, but what about the characters who could totally lift Mjolnir? Like, without a doubt, T'Challa definitely could. Easily, like in his sleep. And then I'd like to think Wong could lift it. He has such a worthy energy surrounding him. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below.